Okay, so let's start. So in the last lecture, we just discussed about the Fiori product as in a nutshell, and we just discussed that there are three types of application inside this Fiori product. That is the transactional, the analytical, and the fact sheet type of application. And this was the general architecture which is actually required in order to implement all the three types of applications. So this is the general architecture. This is not the architecture which you will always require in order to implement any one type of application. It can be a transactional one, or it can be a analytical or fact sheet. So if you're just planning for any one type of application, then you can remove some components. But in general, if you're planning in the long run to implement all the applications, then this is the general architecture that you will have to follow in order to go ahead and implement all the applications. So just a small review, what were the three types of application that we discussed? So basically, SAP has developed three app types, each of them distinguished by their focus and infrastructure requirements. So the first app type are transactional apps. And as the name indicates, they allow you to perform transactional tasks such as creating, changing, or processing requests. The second app types are analytical apps, and they allow you to have role-based insight into real-time operations of your business by collecting and displaying key figures directly in your browser. So basically, analytical apps offer the ability to monitor, or you can say to track, your most important KPIs or key performance indicators in real time, where you can react immediately on changes in market conditions or operations. The third app type are fact sheets that we discussed, and they display contextual information about central objects used in business operation. For an example, a customer as a central object, or as a material as a business object, which you can use, and you can get all the facts of that particular material of a particular customer using this fact sheet applications, wherein you would only be able to see the information. You would not be able to do any transaction inside this fact sheet application. That is, let's say if you have implemented a customer fact sheet application. So inside the customer, you will see all the information of different types of customers. There can be a customer Apple, a customer Nokia, a customer Samsung. So if you click on Apple, then you will just see the information about this related customer. You won't be able to perform any transaction, or change anything, change any information about the customer, or create a new customer. No, you just would be able to see the information, some facts of a particular object, business object inside this particular fact sheet application. So this is the fact sheet application. So apart from that, fact sheet and analytical applications require SAP HANA database to run, and transactional application can run on SAP HANA database as well as non-SAP HANA database as well. So there is no such requirement for transactional in terms of database, but for fact sheet and analytical applications to work perfectly, or in order to implement the fact sheet or analytical applications, HANA database is a must, which should be connected to your SAP Business Suite. So let's discuss this architecture in a bit more detail in terms of the different types of applications. So as I told you, this is a general architecture which is at present in front of you, which will help you to implement all the three types of Fiori application. But now let's discuss the architecture in terms of different business application, that is the different Fiori applications. So first of all, it's the transactional application. So let's discuss the architecture from the transactional app types point of view. So let's take it from the top. The ABAP front-end server basically over here contains all the infrastructure components to generate an SAP Fiori app specific UI for the clients and to communicate with the backend systems. The product specific add-ons which you can see inside this ABAP front-end server are the specific UIs for each SAP Fiori app. The UI infrastructure provides the common infrastructure needed for all SAP Fiori apps and contains the SAP UI5 control library and the SAP Fiori Launchpad. Then there is a SAP NetWeaver Gateway component, which handles the communication between the client and the SAP Business Suite backend. It uses OData services to provide the backend data and functions and processes HTTPS requests for OData services. So this is your ABAP front-end server. So basically, as you can see in the diagram, three important components are required to implement the transactional application. ABAP front-end server, which is nothing but your NetWeaver gateway, ABAP backend server, and any database connected to your ABAP backend server. Inside the ABAP front-end server, these are some of the components present. So one is the product-specific UI add-on, other is the UI infrastructure, and third is the SAP Gateway 2.0. So basically, what happens, when you go for the implementation of gateway on a server, you will first install an ABAP stack. Okay. On top of ABAP stack, you will first install the NetWeaver Gateway Foundation component, so that particular ABAP stack starts acting as a NetWeaver gateway. So that is, you will first install the foundation component Gateway 2.0 on top of ABAP stack, so that ABAP stack starts working as an ABAP front-end server, which is nothing but your NetWeaver gateway server. Then on top of this NetWeaver gateway component, that is Gateway 2.0, you install certain UI infrastructure components. Okay, so there are certain UI infrastructure components which is required in order to basically this UI infrastructure components, they provide all the UI5 control library and the SAP Fiori Launchpad. So this is handled by the UI infrastructure, which you will configure or you will install onto your ABAP front-end server. Then you will install the product-specific UI add-on. So let's say you want to implement 5 Fiori application, 5 Fiori transactional application. So for every Fiori application, there would be a product-specific UI add-on, which takes care of the user interface for that particular Fiori application. So if say there are 5 Fiori applications, then 5 UI components, that is 5 product-specific UI add-on, you will install onto your ABAP front-end server. So UI infrastructure and Gateway 2.0, these two are central components. One-time things that you will do onto your ABAP front-end server, the Gateway 2.0 and UI infrastructure components. But apart from that, the product-specific UI add-on, whatever type of application or whatever application you want to go ahead with, that particular application's UI add-on, you need to install first onto your ABAP front-end server. So for every Fiori application, there is a separate UI add-on. We'll see how we can get that information of which is the exact UI add-on which is required for that particular Fiori application. But as of now, just keep it into mind that for every Fiori application, there would be some UI add-on which will take care of the user interface for that particular Fiori application, which you will have to install onto your front-end server. Not only install, but also configuration we will have to do for every Fiori application in order to go ahead and make that Fiori application visible to the end user. So this is what is contained into your ABAP front-end server. Now let's talk about the ABAP backend server. The ABAP backend server is where the SAP Business Suite products are installed. So these products basically provide the business logic and the backend data, including roles and authorizations. So the database, as we have discussed for transactional apps, which I said before, can be any DB or SAP HANA. So basically, if you see in the ABAP backend server, definitely your business suite component would be installed. That is for sure. It can be an HCM module or SRM or CRM, whatever might be a module which might be present inside your ABAP backend server. But apart from that, there is one more component which is going to be present into your ABAP backend server, which is called as the OData integration add-on. Now, this particular add-on, again, the OData integration add-on, which we'll discuss in a bit more detail in the upcoming slides. So for every Fiori application, there are 2 things. One is the UI add-on, the product-specific UI add-on, which you will install onto the ABAP front-end server, and there would be an OData integration add-on, which you will install and configure onto your ABAP backend server. So for every Fiori application, whichever you want to implement, every Fiori transactional application, there would be a product-specific UI add-on, and there would be an OData integration add-on, which needs to be installed onto the respective front-end and back-end server. Are you getting it, guys? Any questions?
I'm clear. Okay.
Okay, that's great. Now, this particular architecture is for the analytical apps. So let's discuss the architecture for analytical apps. Uh, so for this landscape, you would need to have a reverse proxy installed in your landscape. So in this architecture, you can see that we are using the SAP Web Dispatcher as the entry point for HTTP requests. So it can either reject or accept connections. And when it accepts a connection, it selects the appropriate application server. So either it can select the ABAP front-end server or the HANA Access Engine to process the request. Okay, so as we have discussed before, that the analytical architecture is a two-tier architecture, wherein there are two application servers involved. One is definitely the ABAP front-end server, and the second one is the HANA Access Engine. The two application servers are involved. So if the transactional data is required, you will connect to your ABAP front-end server, and from the ABAP front-end server, you will connect to, you will get out the data. And if analytical data is required, you will connect to your HANA Access Engine. HANA Access Engine then will connect to your SAP HANA and will pull out the data from the SAP HANA and give it back to your analytical Fiori apps. So this decision whether to route the call to the ABAP front-end server or to the HANA Access Engine is taken care or is taken by the web dispatcher or the reverse proxy, whatever you're going to configure in your landscape. So the ABAP front-end server over here, if you see, primarily remains the same. So we still have the product-specific add-on, the UI infrastructure, and the SAP NetWeaver gateway. Okay, so all of the components which it can be a transactional or an analytical. You can see inside the ABAP front-end server there are three important components which needs to be there, and the three important components are same in case of transactional and in case of analytical. So SAP Gateway 2.0 foundation component, then some UI infrastructure component, and the product-specific UI add-on. Now coming to the Access Engine, the HANA Access Engine. So the Access Engine, as we can see, as we have discussed, is a lightweight application server in SAP HANA server, in SAP HANA system that takes the backend data and remodels it using virtual data models, that is VDMs. The app content that you see in the HANA Access Engine over here, the app content component, this, basically it provides filters and views as well as additional data for the products running on the SAP HANA server. The virtual data model for this app type are deployed with SAP HANA Live. And apart from that, another important thing is that SAP HANA database is must in case of analytical application architecture. HANA Access Engine, which is a lightweight application server which will pull out data from the SAP HANA database and will remodel it using virtual data models and then give it back to your SAP Web Dispatcher so that SAP Web Dispatcher can again give it back to your mobile devices or your front-end Fiori analytical applications. Okay. So either the analytical data or the transactional data. So the Web Dispatcher will take the call, either route the call to the ABAP front-end server or to the HANA Access Engine. Both of these are different application servers. Okay, so let's go ahead. Last but not the least, this particular architecture is for fact sheet applications. So the final app type of fact sheets, and this slide basically gives you a detailed view of the fact sheet architecture. So with the exception of running on SAP HANA, having a web dispatcher in the landscape and the search models landscape is the same as that of transactional app types. So apart from the transactional app types, two things are extra over here. That is the SAP HANA database needs to be there, and apart from that, the web dispatcher also needs to be there inside your landscape. So now what happens basically, as we have discussed before, again, the fact sheet applications might require two types of data, either the transactional data or the search oriented facts data. So depending upon the type of data you require, the applications require, the web dispatcher either will route the call to the ABAP front-end server in case of the transactional data, or it will route the call to the SAP Business Suite using the protocol INA, which will connect to the search models which are present inside this ABAP system, and the search models which are present in the ABAP system will correspondingly connect to the HANA database and will pull out the data from the search views which would be defined inside the HANA database, and then give it back to your to your front end server, and from the front end server give it back to the web dispatcher, and from the web dispatcher it will go back to your Fiori applications. So the protocol over here, as you can see, is the INA that would be required by the web dispatcher in order to connect to the ABAP backend system. And when the web dispatcher connects to the ABAP backend system, then there are search models which are present inside the ABAP backend system, which will connect to the respective search views in the HANA database, pull out the data from the HANA database, and then relay it back to your front-end server, and then to the web dispatcher, and then to the Fiori application running on any of the device. So this is the architecture for your fact sheet applications. Any questions from architecture point of view, guys, before we go ahead?
You can go ahead.
Okay, great. Isha, as this is your first lecture, are you getting it?
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, you have taken previously any lecture. Just one question I want to say, because here what you're using is you're saying that data is already presented, like models are already there, or we have SAP has already designed those applications. If you want to customize something, then I think so these add-ons or this is not required, right? If you want to create something of your own.
No. If you want to create something of your own, then this is not required. Now see what happens, this add-ons, what it contains. Now there are two perspectives. Either you can write your own code, that is creating your custom application. So in that case, there would be a UI5 developer who would develop the UI code, and there would be an ABAPer who will develop the OData code. Correct? Now in case of Fiori application, what SAP is doing, SAP is providing you add-ons. Inside the add-on, actually when you're installing the add-ons, you're actually incorporating the codes, the UI code onto the ABAP front-end server when you're installing the product-specific UI add-on, and the OData code when you're installing the OData integration add-on. So this basically, in terms of add-on, you're getting the code which is developed by SAP. So later on, when we are going to extend the standard application, so we are going to touch this add-on. We are going to touch the code that got generated because of this add-on, and we are going to modify in the standard code in order to achieve our extensions. Are you getting me?
Yeah. Right.
So this is what we are going to do. So in this particular course, we are going to study how the standard Fiori applications are actually implemented with the help of this add-on, because just by installing the add-on, the things are not going to work. We need to configure it and basically link all of these add-ons so that this particular Fiori add-on connects to this OData integration add-on, and the corresponding environment is created in the background so that the entire Fiori application works perfectly fine. Okay, so this is what we're going to do. You have missed just one lecture before, so I will forward you the recording of the previous lecture as well. Okay, so you just go through that, probably if you get some time tomorrow. Then if you have any doubts, probably what we have discussed, we have just discussed the application types. Apart from that, everything else we have discussed in the demo. But even though you can just go once again through the previous lecture, just one lecture has happened. You can go through that, and any question you can come back to me tomorrow.
All right. Yeah.
Jigar, I think I also want the day for yesterday's recording.
Okay, no problem. No problem. I'll forward it. Okay. So that's it from the architecture point of view. So that's it in this particular state. Let me just open another now. Just a minute. Okay. So let's understand the component inside this architecture in a bit more detail. Now there are this, important components which are actually present when we were talking about, the UI infrastructure component in the front end server and the OData integration add-on onto the backend server. So these are actually, these four important components which actually take care of all of that. So let's understand these four important components which plays a very important role before planning or designing your architecture before you implement the standard Fiori applications. So before we talk upon these four important components, let's first draw a diagram. So let me just okay. So as of now, we have discussed, these three components very much in detail up till now. That is, always in your architecture, there are going to be three important components. One is definitely your backend, then the gateway, and then the client device, which will, connect to the gateway. Gateway in turn will connect to the backend, and then ultimately the data will flow from the backend to the client device. Now, what exactly is a gateway? Gateway is nothing but an ABAP stack, similar to your backend system. Backend is also an ABAP stack, and on top of this ABAP stack, you install the related modules. So either a HR module or a CRM module or whatever module, the business process that you want to use. Similarly, over here onto the NetWeaver gateway, you first, the basis guys, they will first install the ABAP stack, normal ABAP stack, and then on top of this ABAP stack, if they install GW core component. So when they install this GW core component onto the ABAP stack, that particular ABAP stack starts acting as a NetWeaver gateway. So a ABAP stack is called as a NetWeaver gateway when there is a GW core component, a GW core add-on present onto the ABAP stack. So if you install this gateway core component onto the backend system itself, so the backend system itself will start acting as a NetWeaver gateway. Okay. So wherever you install this GW core component, so this GW core component is nothing but, if you remember in the previous diagram, the gateway 2.0, the gateway 2.0 package, which I was talking about in the earlier diagram of the transactional and the analytical and the fact sheet application. So that particular component, that particular package is renamed as GW underscore core. So wherever you install this particular package, or you can say this particular add-on, that particular system starts acting as a NetWeaver gateway. So this is the foundation component which makes an ABAP stack starts acting as a NetWeaver gateway. But as we know, one of the major tasks of this NetWeaver gateway is to connect to your backend using RFC and then convert the data into OData. Okay, so now just by installing the gateway GW core component, it will not start supporting this new protocol which is called as OData. Now OData is a new protocol. There are some libraries associated with this. So only if these libraries are present inside the gateway, then only it will start supporting the OData protocol and the OData services can be generated. So rather than just installing the GW core, you will also have to install one more component so that the gateway starts supporting the OData, which is
IWFND. So this IWFND needs to be present wherever the GW core is present, because a gateway core, a foundation gateway component, is incomplete if it does not support OData libraries. Okay, because this IWFND, when you install this IWFND as an add-on, what in turn you get is, into your system, you get all the OData libraries incorporated into your NetWeaver gateway. So that now your NetWeaver gateway also starts supporting the OData services. Without installing the IWFND, the OData libraries wouldn't be present onto that system, and that's the result. The OData services or the OData protocol would not be supported by gateway. So wherever this GW core is present, onto the same system, IWFND should also be present, because without IWFND, the definition of gateway would not be completed. So these two components are always present together wherever they are present. So it can be either present onto your backend system, both of them, so that your backend system starts acting as a gateway and also starts supporting the OData services. So either you can install over here, or either you can install it over here onto a different physical server, which is called as the embedded hub deployment approach. Wherever. It cannot happen that you will install the GW code over here and the IWFND over here. No, then it will make no sense. It will make no sense, because this is the gateway, and the major task of the gateway is to support OData service and to provide OData service, and that libraries are not present in order to generate that, then this gateway is of no use. So one of the major tasks is to support and generate OData service. So this has to be there wherever the gateway, wherever the GW core foundation component is present. Okay. Now the third component, which is a very important component. So before I discuss the third component, let me draw one more diagram. Okay. So now let's understand how the how the Fiori application works. So let's say this is a UI5, or you can say a standard Fiori application, which is designed by, let's say, a UI developer, or by SAP's UI developer, who has designed this UI screen using the UI5 language. Now this UI screen wants to show some live data, so it needs to connect to your backend system. So definitely it cannot connect directly to your backend system. It will use the OData services, which is exposed from your gateway. That is, it is exposed indirectly, you can say, from your IWFND component. Okay, so your IWFND, which has the OData libraries, exposes this OData services. Now what happened when the UI5 application calls an OData services, which is present onto your NetWeaver gateway? So where this IWFND component would be present? Definitely onto your gateway. Whichever system is called gateway, onto that particular system, the IWFND would be called. So indirectly, you can say your OData services always are exposed from your NetWeaver gateway. But the internal component inside the gateway that actually exposes the OData services is the IWFND. Okay, so gateway is something which becomes exteriorly visible, but internally the IWFND is the actual component which actually generates the OData services. Okay, So now, when you call a particular OData service, the UI5 application, when it calls a particular OData service is nothing but like a web service, okay, a simple web service. So now there might be some source for this particular, OData service which you have called, which is exposed from the NetWeaver gateway, from where it is getting the data. So this OData service, there might be some source which is, actually filling the data inside this particular web service or inside this particular OData service. So that data is defined inside the IWBP component. So the IWBP component is actually the data source, you can say, or the DPC and the MPC classes, that is the data provider classes and the metadata provider classes are present inside the IWBP component, are provided by the IWBP component. So without the IWBP component, even though you are having the OData services, but the OData services will not show any data if there is no IWBP component, because IWBP component is, like your data source. Okay, so there is one more component that you will have to, that needs to be present inside your architecture, that is the IWBP component, which will act as a data source for a corresponding OData service exposed by the IWFND component. So now there is flexibility for this IWBP. Either you can install this IWBP onto the gateway itself, that is over here, or you can also install the IWBP onto the backend. So there is flexibility. So either you can select the the IWBP component can be present over here onto the gateway, or the IWBP can be present over here onto the backend. Now let's consider the first scenario wherein the IWBP is present over here onto the gateway. So when the client is calling the OData service will call the IWFNT component, IWFNT component will call the IWBP component. But now since the IWBP component is present onto the same system alias that is going to be used in order to call the IWBP component would be local. So in this particular case, the system alias would be local because the IWBP component is present locally. So the IWBP is actually consisting of your code. The OData code is actually present inside the IWBP's DPC and MPC classes, that is the data provider and metadata provider classes. So over there, inside the DPC and MPC class, the developer might have written some code such that this IWBP component, or you can say the DPC or MPC class, will connect to your backend system using RFC and will pull out your data from the backend system. So what the diagram would be, IWBP. So from the IWBP, you can say IWBP as DPC or MPC classes, wherein the ABAP code would be written. This ABAP code will actually take care and will correspondingly a little bit less space. Connect to your backend system using some RFC. So this is the scenario if you go for the IWBP component present onto the gateway. So if it is present onto the gateway, when the UI5 application calls the OData service, it will actually call the IWFNT component. IWFNT component will locate for the IWBP, and if it is present onto the gateway itself, it will use the system alias local, and with the system alias local, it will connect to the IWBP component. The IWBP component will provide you the DPC and MPC classes. Inside the DPC and MPC classes, you will write the there would be some chunk of code written, which will internally call some RFC and will connect to the backend system and will pull out the data and then ultimately return it back to the OData service and ultimately to your UI5 application. Okay. And if the IWBP component is present over here, the only difference would be the system alias over here that the IWFNT component is going to use in order to connect to the backend system would be your, what we say, the remote system alias. And over here, the RFC would be local. That's going to be the difference. So you can install this IWBP component anywhere, either onto the gateway or either onto the backend. Both are possible. So are you able to understand the concept between the GW core, IWFND and IWBP? Niranjan?
Yeah,
Yes, Engineer. No issues in this.
No. Okay, great. Okay, so this is how the things happen, you know. So the IWBP can be present over here or over here.
Jigar?
Yeah.
I was actually on the office call, but if you could, I hope you're recording this session, right?
Correct. I'm recording it because even
because until now I was not, I had to take my office call, so.
not an issue.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Just one thing, next time if you are busy with something,
Yeah.
this is luckily I'm recording this time, but next time if you're busy with something, just inform me. So I can ultimately record it, and then later on I can give it to you, because every time I might not be recording. So just for.
Yeah, certainly. Thanks.
Okay then, no problem. Okay. So yeah.
So I think the DPC means data provider class, right?
Correct.
MPC means
Metadata provider class.
Metadata.
Model provider. You can say model provider class.
okay.
Model provider class and the data provider class. The details of this we'll discuss later on in the last sessions, when we are going to actually touch the OData service and we are going to extend the OData services. At that point of time, we are going to go into the detail of how this DPC and MPC classes look. But as of now, just at an overview level, just get an idea that this is how, the things flow when you're running a Fiori or a UI5 application.
Okay.
An OData service, IWFND will connect to an IWBP using the system alias. Then the IWBP, the DPC and MPC class, whatever the code the ABAPer has written, that particular code using some RFC will either connect to the remote backend system using RFC, or it will connect locally using and pull out the data from that particular local system, whatever the chunk of code the ABAPer might have written over here, depending upon where the data is actually located. Okay then. So coming back to our components. So we have discussed these three components: GW core, IWFND, and IWBP. Definitely, you guys might be having one more, question, such that when to go. I mean, when to go for IWBP over here or IWBP over here? What is the significance? I mean, in real time, should the IWBP should be present over here or over here? We'll discuss that part later. When there are multiple options available, and you can go for any of the available options depending upon your requirement. We'll discuss when to go for what particular approach. But as of now, we have just discussed the components. And apart from these three components, there is one more component called as the SAP GW FND. Now, what happens? Now initially, what the basis consultant had to do, they had to install the separate components onto the separate system. So first they have to install the ABAP stack, and then top of ABAP stack they had to install a separate component GW core, then a separate component IWFND, then a separate component either onto the NetWeaver gateway as IWBP or onto the backend system. So there were separate tasks, and it was actually increasing the overhead onto the basis consultant. So what SAP has done is, from NetWeaver gateway version 7.0. From that version, now SAP has provided only one component called as SAP GWFND. And now this SAP GWFND is like a package. Inside this package, all the three components which we have discussed, the GW core, IWFND, and IWBP, all the three are present. All the three are present inside the SAP GWFND. So now what the basis consultant will have to do is, they do not have to go for different separate installation. So let's say the IWBP was present over here in my scenario, I want to make this IWBP present over here and the GW core and IWFND over here. So what I will do, rather than installing the separate components over here and here, if the NetWeaver Gateway version is the latest one, that is 7.40 and above, then the basis guys can just install SAP GWFND over here onto the gateway, and the similar thing over here onto the backend. Just one component onto both the systems. So it will automatically take care of the intrinsic components, whatever is required. GW core and IWFND over here and IWBP over here. So now from NetWeaver Gateway 7.4, if you are having, you can install. So you can see, onto the NetWeaver Gateway, GWFND is present, which is actually taking care of the GW core and IWFND. And over here also, you will onto the backend also, you will install the GWFND where the IWBP will be taken care. One very important point that you should be noting as of now is all the standard Fiori applications, all the 577 applications which are there, all the standard Fiori application, they recommend, or that is actually not recommend, but they have made a rule that the IWBP component should always be present onto your backend, and the GW core and IWFND component should always be present onto your NetWeaver Gateway. The IWBP should not be present over here if you are implementing a standard Fiori application. The standard Fiori application, whenever you implement or whenever you configure, it takes into consideration that by default that the IWBP component is present onto your backend system. Okay, so that's the reason over here also you can see that on the backend system the GWFND will take care of the IWBP only, and onto the NetWeaver Gateway the GWFND will take care of the GW core and IWFND. So SAP NetWeaver Gateway server functionalities and SAP NetWeaver backend enablement. Any questions?
No, it's clear.
Not clear? Isha?
It's clear.
Okay. Great. So, okay. Just a minute.
Okay, guys. So now we'll discuss all the three possibilities. So basically, there are three possibilities which we are going to which we'll discuss right now. That is, over here, if you see the GW core and IWFND present over here, and the IWBP present over here. The second possibility is that GW core, IWFND, and IWBP, all the three present onto the gateway system. And the third possibility, wherein you are going for the embedded deployment, wherein the GW core, IWFND, and IWBP, all the three present onto your backend system itself. Okay, we'll discuss all the three possibilities. So over here, this is a hub deployment, wherein the NetWeaver Gateway is present onto a separate physical server, and onto this NetWeaver Gateway, you are just installing the gateway core and the IWFND component, and the IWBP is present onto the backend. So now what happens, the OData service development, as I told you, there would be two developers involved. One would be, whenever you're developing a custom application, there would be two developers involved. One would be the UI developer and another would be the OData developer. So in this case, if the IWBP is present onto the backend system, the ABAP code or the OData services would be, the ABAP code would be developed by the ABAPer onto the backend system. So in order to generate the OData service, or in order to write the code for generating the OData services, he will log into the SAP Business Suite and he will do the development over here, because the IWBP is present over here, because the DPC and MPC classes would be present over here. Okay, So the development will take place in the SAP Business Suite backend system if the IWBP is present over here. And this is the approach, or this is the, you can say the architecture that is followed by the SAP Fiori standard applications. So the SAP Fiori standard application takes into consideration that is your GW core and IWFND present over here, or the IWBP present over here. And if it's the latest version, then GWFND present on both of the systems, whatever. But the IWBP, that is the development component, should be present onto your backend system. Okay. But now what happens? What is the flaw for this particular architecture? This particular architecture is not recommended when you develop a custom application. Now what happens, in case of standard Fiori application, you as such do not have to do any development, because already the OData services and the OData code is already developed by SAP. Similarly, the UI code is also developed by SAP. You just have to do the configuration. So this particular architecture is okay if you go for the standard Fiori application, but when you go for the custom application, wherein you will have to develop this OData code, so it is not recommended, you can say, to give the access to the developer to log into the backend system and do the development over there, because there might be some critical operations running over there, and some malfunctioning of the code can actually temper the system performance. So in order to avoid that, in case of custom Fiori application, or you can say in case of when you're developing an application from scratch, in that case it is normally preferred to have the IWBP component present over here onto the NetWeaver gateway. That is, onto your backend, nothing would be present. The IWBP component would not be present. IWBP would be present over here onto the gateway, such that now the development will take place in the gateway hub system. So whatever the OData service that needs to be developed, or whatever the OData code that would be that needs to be developed by the ABAPer would be taken care, or would be developed by the ABAPer inside the NetWeaver gateway. So mostly when you're developing a custom application, IWBP is preferred to be present into your gateway system. But all the standard Fiori application, there is a mandate by SAP that all the standard Fiori application will work only if the IWBP component is present. And that is fine for the customer. The reason is the development is already done by SAP. So most of the times, you will not touch the backend system. The reason being is the development is already done. You just have to install some components so that the code is automatically generated within the system rather than doing any development. This is fine for the standard Fiori application, but for the custom development, it is preferred to have the IWBP present onto the gateway system. And the last approach is the embedded deployment. So in case of embedded deployment, there won't be any gateway as a middleware. So what you're doing, you're installing everything onto your business suite and giving the capabilities to your business suite itself to start acting as a gateway, and also to relay out or pull up or empty out the data. So both the tasks will be taken care by the business suite. So the OData services will also be generated by the business suite, and the data is also going to be present inside the business suite. So if you do not go for a central hub deployment, if you go for the embedded deployment, in that case, all the three components needs to be present over here: the GW code, the IWFND, and the SAP GWFND. The GW code, the IWFND, and the IWBP. Or you can just install one component if your business suite is up to the mark or to the latest level 7.40. Then you can just install GWFND. That's it. But then the only flaw for this particular architecture is you cannot directly expose your backend to the consumers. So in order to, there is no middleware in between. So you will have to have a reverse proxy as a mandatory component over here in order to shield your business suite from the consumers, from the external world. So you can see additional security component needed for extranet scenarios in case of embedded deployment approach, wherein everything, all the three important components would be present inside the same backend system. Any doubts you are having onto this, guys? Isha, Ramani, Niranjan?
Is it clear only? No issues.
Okay.
No, it's clear.
Okay, that's great. That's great. So basically, this is where we'll stop for the day. So from tomorrow, we'll move on to the more technicalities and some more components. We'll discuss the component that we have discussed in a bit more detail, and we'll move ahead from there. Okay. So probably from by tomorrow or by day after tomorrow, you will get the system server access, and then we can also start the practicals onto the same.
Okay.
And tomorrow we have a class, right?
Yeah, definitely. Tomorrow we have the class the same time, 9 p.m. to 10 p.m. IST.
Okay. And
I guess Niranjan, you have in the
recording whenever you get a chance. Yeah. Please.
yes, and I just got the call from the agent to inform you that in the morning also you are having this UI5 class, so please be available. I mean,
sure.
morning of Indian Standard Time, 7 a.m. Indian Standard Time.
Morning 7 a.m. That's the thing. Maybe not available today. You can just record it for me as well. That would be great.
Okay, you won't be available. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
this evening. Yeah, this evening I may have to go somewhere and got some commitment.
Okay, then I will just inform.
Yeah. If I am the only guy, then we can reschedule it. But if there are other people attending the course as well, then
So there is one more guy who's attending. So I'll just record it. I'll just ask them to record, and I will provide it to you. So next lecture would be on Monday only. In any case, okay. So you will have some time in between, and then we can continue from there.
Okay. Or maybe if the other guy is okay to move it to tomorrow, see if that's a possibility. Yeah.
Okay, not an issue. I will update you.
Not that's fine. Just record and send. Just check it out.
Okay. No issues, Niranjan.
Thank you.
Okay, guys. So let's meet tomorrow, same time.
Okay, thank you, Jay.
All right. Thanks a lot. Can you share the recordings?
Yes, definitely. I'll share it with you.
Will you share the PPT also, Jigar, later?
Sorry, Raman?
Will you share the PPT also to us later?
Definitely. I will share it in some time. Just give me some time. Let me complete all the slides.
Yes, okay. No problem.
I will share everything, each and every PPT, and also some more documents I have created. I'll share everything with you. Do not worry.
Do you have any other documents also regarding this theory and kind of thing to go through this?
For Fiori?
For Fiori?
Yes, definitely. I have some good documents which I will share with you later. We'll discuss onto that. Some very good documents I have created on my own, as well as I have some SAP documents as well, which I have got from the workshops, some of the workshops which I have attended from SAP. All of that I will be sharing with you. Do not worry.
Okay. So do we have classes on the Saturdays and Sundays, or how are you scheduling it?
As of now, I'm not planned it. Let's talk on that tomorrow, if it's fine.
Okay, no problem. Okay, sure.
Okay then.
Thanks,
Okay, guys.
Okay.
Okay, guys. Let's meet tomorrow, same time. Bye.
Bye-bye.